Hello, everyone. My name is David Reed. Welcome to Dial the Gate, episode 312 of the Stargate Oral History Project. I really appreciate you being here for this pre-recorded episode. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a really long time. John G. Lenic started off as a producer's assistant in Stargate SG-1 Season 1, worked his way through unit production manager and full producer for the different series all the way through Atlantis and Universe. He is a critical player behind the scenes to so much of what got through on screen. There are people who are just responsible for budgets and esoteric stuff that we don't normally think of as audience members in terms of getting a show out. And this guy was one of them. And over the course of the next hour plus, because I have something special at the end after John, you're going to get some real interesting glimpses here. I've had the fortune of having John Smith on, who's been able to explore some things in great detail, but John Lenic goes even further. He and I go way back, way through production, through Atlantis, and I am thrilled to finally have the opportunity to sit down and talk with him now on Dial the Gate. This was recorded about a month ago, so we're going to go back in time and bring him in. John Lenic, producer for Stargate's SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. John, there are few people that I've had the privilege of talking to who have had as many hats as you have had to wear throughout this whole production. And I know I've been dogging you for years to get you on. I'm sure it's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. God, just leave me alone. So since this is a pre-recorded show and I can bleep myself, I would like to professionally apologize for all of the bullshit that I've put you through during Dial the Gate and during Gate World when I was on there. It's like, what are they doing now? They did what? Okay, I'll talk to them. All right.
All good. No, it's through you and through the fans that the show had that it was so successful for so many years, and that's kind of, it's you don't see that very often, or at least I don't.
No, yeah. There is an alchemy, and I think we spoke about this before I turned on the record button. That was circling around this whole production. And, we were just in the fan base, we were responding to it. But what did you say? You were a baby when you really started this. You're not much older than I am. When you started this production, how old were you? How did you get into it? And how did you watch it evolve over the 17 television seasons? What was that like?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, not many shows go for as long as it did, and cover. I mean, let me back up. I started on the show as a producer's assistant, and I moved up, I believe, to co-EP in the end, and it was a phenomenal experience from beginning to end. And it was just on a show like this. Because call it a sci-fi series, call it cheesy, call it whatever you want. When you're talking to the professional world out there, they kind of look at Stargate like, what's that? It's like, every show was like a mini feature, and we would do huge special effects. We'd have huge insurance claims. Very few shows give you the experience that you have, because you've handled everything. You've handled cast being sick and having to shut down for a day. You've handled every insurance claims related to film, which you can't say you do anymore. And because in the beginning we shot on 16 mil and then changed to 35, and that was a crazy time. So I have a lot of people to thank for that, obviously, and a lot of people that I really enjoyed working with over the years, and so it really was as you said, it is about the alchemy of the crew, and there was an alchemy there that was amazing, and just seeing it all happen and evolve over the time and develop was fascinating.
It's an interesting time, a slice of time, because not only are you learning your craft throughout this whole thing and in helping this thing grow, but also from 1997 to 2010, 2011, I mean, the range of transformation in the industry from going
Yes.
to Super 16 to 35 to experimenting with digital in season 4 just a little bit with one episode, and then bringing it on tentatively for Atlantis, but I only recently realized it was not full HD. It was like a crunched HD to
Yes.
save some money here and there so that we could squeeze out some more money for effect shots and everything else.
That's right.
And then by the end of it, just full blown universe. That ship, it's just an extraordinary amount of amazing work from hundreds of amazing people.
Absolutely. I mean, I for Universe specifically, it was James Robbins, developed that ship, and it was beautiful and stunning, and it was really a pleasure to work on that ship, that project. It was Universe specifically. The cast were phenomenal, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, and every one of these shows had their own little personalities and quirks and everything else. But I'm curious, when you started, how old were you? And were you assistants to specific producers? Did they pass you around?
Yes, let me use my calculator to figure out how old I was.
You're a numbers man, so
yeah.
Carry the 4. Exactly. Oh my God, he's got a calculator on him. Well, anyone's got a phone, so.
I think I was 22.
Did you come out of film school? What was your background beforehand?
So I went to film school at Vancouver Film School,
Okay.
and then finished that. And a local producer came and scouted my parents' house for a movie, a Canadian feature film called Whale Music, and it was starring Maury Chaykin and Paul Gross way back then. And they came to scout, and I was there, and I asked the producer, he's like, what? And I'm like, what? He asked if I wanted to be in the business. I said, absolutely. And he invited me to lunch. I went to lunch, and I never left his office. And then I worked in his office for free for the first while. And then when Whale Music was greenlit and starting to be made, they asked me to be one of the producer's assistants. And I said, sure. And they said, well, we only have $500 in the budget a week, and there's 3 or 4 of you. Would you be wanting to split the money, or do you want to take the whole check yourself? And I said I'd split the money with them. And so 3 or 4 of us got hired on Whale Music, and I used that to learn. I learned movie magic budgeting on that show because I wouldn't spend time with the production manager to really understand it. And he gave me some budgets to take home and play with in the program and figure it out myself.
Wow.
And then there's a producer in Vancouver who was just moving from UPM to producer. Her name is Tracy Jeffrey, and she hired me on as her assistant. And we did 10 TV movies of the week together and that was in a full calendar year or a year and a half. And that was phenomenal. And then on the last one, Ron French was the production manager, and then he was transitioning over to Stargate SG-1 as the production manager in season 1. And at that point in my life, I was like, this is the biggest show coming to Vancouver. I want to get on this thing. I had I willed my way into my head that I wanted to do this. So when Ron asked me to come and be a producer's assistant over there, maybe for Michael Greenberg and Richard Dean Anderson, I jumped at the opportunity. And
you saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Are you a sci-fi fan?
I do. Well, I love Star Wars,
Okay.
and but I'm not a big Star Trek fan, and I guess I did Altered Carbon as well. So
absolutely, no, Altered Carbon.
Yes.
and Mr. Robot. I talked with you a little bit through Mr. Robot that final season. Oh my God, what do you think it was when they scouted the property?
Yeah.
What do you think it was that they saw in you? To your horn just a little bit, John. I know it's hard, but that was like, what? Is it your thing for numbers? Is it that you keep a cool head? Is it that you were willing to work your ass off? What was it that they said? Let's give this guy a shot.
I think it was that I was willing to work my ass off.
Okay.
And do it for free and also and show like I cared. And I think my ability to anticipate and then also how to read a room.
Yeah, no, you
Very
have to read
important.
a room. You have to, because there's a lot of money at play,
Oh,
and it's so,
absolutely.
John Smith and I had this conversation where it's like there is so much on the line, and you have to be able to keep your cool. And if you can't, you're not going to last. You're just
No,
not going
you're
to
right.
make it.
No, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
wild.
So,
So
yeah, I mean, that I think is a big asset of mine, is knowing how to read a room and also keeping my cool, and also just dealing with things very frankly. I don't, I'm not going to, embellish, or also not
okay.
going to undervalue what I'm saying. So,
So you were brought in alongside Ron French
Ron
for
French.
season 1 of SG-1 as assistant to the executive producers.
Yes,
You're watching this thing. So before Children of the Gods went to frame 1.
that's right. I started November 4th, 1996.
My gosh. What was it like watching this? Had you seen the film? And
Well,
what was
yes.
it like watching this thing come to life around you from Richard Hugh Dolan, the carpenters, Mark and Robert Davidson, the painters. You've got everyone from Bridget McGuire all the way through to Christina McQuarrie.
Yep.
Is it just you're riding this wave? What was that like watching this thing unfold?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, back at the time, I remember getting on it and being just enthralled with what was happening, and just very into the art department and what they were designing, and every aspect of it, and scared of Jonathan Glasner and Brad Wright, as one is. And
Glasner, I can understand, but Wright, really?
well, just it was, they were the bosses.
Yeah,
they were
that's
the
true.
producers. They're
That's
the
true.
showrunners. And
Yeah.
that was phenomenal experience, and really, just dealing with everything was amazing. And then also, to back up, I did see the movie. I love the movie. I love
Yeah.
the movie of Stargate. And when I heard it was coming, I was like, wow, I really want to get on that, because it was in sci-fi. As I've learned over the years, you have it's all about problem solving.
Yep.
That's because sci-fi, inevitably you're going to be tight to the budget. You're going to spend all your dollars building this world that has to exist, that people have to believe in, and that sort of thing. And you're going to have to solve problems. And so it really is. That's why I love it. There's so many layers to it, and it's so challenging from a production standpoint. And I love that. Call it a jigsaw puzzle. And that's how I look at it. And I really enjoy that, and I feed off that. And it is the ability to deal with many different people, many different personalities over the years, and know how to pivot and address each one. But the wave was fantastic. I mean, it was to being able, with the cast when they first came to Vancouver, and
SG-1.
SG-1, with Christopher, Michael, and Amanda specifically, they were just in awe of what was happening, and we got to walk the red carpet for the opening of Planet Hollywood in Vancouver. I mean, at that time, Planet Hollywood is coming to Vancouver. Oh, this little town getting a Planet Hollywood, and to walk a red carpet, the full city block length with all these people it was wild. And having that experience was at the time was, whoa, this is crazy. I remember for the premiere of that first season, I got to fly on the private jet that flew the cast down to Santa Monica, go to the premiere, and come back on the private jet. That was amazing. I mean, that was, at that time, growing up my dad is a commercial fisherman, and my mom stayed at home with us. And, being in the film industry was completely stepping out of the box and the comfort zone of my family, and that sort of thing. So to be able to do these things that were crazy, just crazy. I mean, it was, how often do you get to ride on a private jet? I mean,
Right.
and that sort of thing. It was very cool.
Did you feel like, as you're walking this tightrope, that you had a net underneath you? Or did you feel like you had no net? Like the environment that you're surrounded in, you have a bunch of people who I know for a fact we're willing to teach.
Oh,
There's
eager
never,
to. There's never a net below me.
Really?
I operate like there's never a net.
Oh, God. Oh, okay. What is your enemy? Is it time? Is it money? Which one is are you more feeling like you go to war with every morning as a producer, you know, being on set?
I like to, as a producer, I like to put as much in front of the camera as possible.
Yeah.
That means, you know, spending the money on things that the show will be seen on air. And so it really pains me when a couple things, you know, crews get entitled and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's annoying and takes it off the screen, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. But what I really struggle with is when you have to go backwards on creative that is so good because you have to meet the budget. And the budget is in TV is the final arbiter of what you're able to spend. And I do on Stargate, what I did learn from, you know, people like John Smith was how to try and get more in front of the camera as possible. I mean, love it or hate it, we did a lot of tandem units and that sort of thing, and it put more money on the screen, and that really has helped me further in my career as well, because that's where you really learn how to get the most on screen and not spend it frivolously, if you will, on
Right.
And so that is my biggest thing. I wake up every morning thinking about whatever show I'm working on and how tight is the budget going to be and what do we have to worry about, and building a contingency in because things are always over budget and all that sort of stuff. And then also wanting to support, like if the DP wants to have 3 cameras because of this and this reason, you want to be able to support those things so that everybody feels good about it. But sometimes you have to make decisions that because of the bottom line. And that's when it gets hard, because some things fall by the wayside and you constantly think, we would have been better with that.
Or when you have planning for 3 cameras, like in Vegas with the drop fall. You know the story I'm talking about?
Yes.
Were you there for this?
I was.
You want to tell this anecdote?
There's a lot of stories from that episode. And that one is I think they ran out of film. Yes, and they hadn't even jumped off, or it was that was crazy.
And no one bothered to say anything.
No.
I can't imagine who it was who had to go into Rob's office back when we were in Vancouver and saying, "Rob, I'm so sorry. Here's what we have right now. That
was me. I think I can't remember. I think. Well, we were. I got the first phone call, I think, from Post going. We didn't get the whole fall on this, and I think I remember having to. Yeah, I can't remember how it happened, but that was crazy. I forgot about that one, actually. That's crazy.
Rob didn't. Yeah, I was having a conversation with him, and you know, you count on people to are we good? We good? We got it? We got everything to be straight with you. I mean, if he's gonna, and I said this to Neil Jackson as well, if he's gonna risk his life, guys, at least film it. You know?
Yeah.
Oh my
totally.
God.
Absolutely.
But it's little things like that that you have to deal with it. And thank God there were backup cameras.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many stories like that I've probably forgotten because it's, you know, just over the years. I mean, there's so many amazing stories. I mean, so many moments in time that I remember from season 1, season 2, season 3, Joe, Paul, everything that, you know, it's amazing. That was such a huge part of my growing up in this industry and really learning the ropes, so to speak.
What are some of the bigger ones that stand out? Are there any that are percolating as we're talking? I'm curious to grab one or two if they come into focus.
I mean, you know, like Nicole Forrest and I would have so much fun in the first season working on budgets or, you know, and just that was fun. To Julie Waterhouse back in Stargate Universe time was the accountant, and we'd have so much fun there too. It was Julie still to this day is practically a sister to me. yeah, I mean, just so many moments over the years. I mean, just the learning moments from Michael Greenberg and Richard Dean
Oh
Anderson,
man.
and um, yeah, I learned so much from them in a short period of time. It was crazy. Uh,
What was it? Is this something that we don't normally think of, especially as Americans down here? You know, we're Canadian dollar, but a lot of them are American productions that you're working
yes.
on,
Yep.
and you're working back and forth between the U.S. dollar and the Canadian dollar.
Yes.
And I would think that, especially as a budget guy, that's a big deal in terms of how much extra you're going to be able to squeeze out that can get on the screen. Can you tell me about how that process works and what it was like when later on in the show, my understanding was that because of the change in the markets and everything else, you couldn't get as much out of the difference as in some of the earlier seasons. And if I'm wrong, straighten me out.
No, no, no. You are right. I mean, right now, for example,
Yeah.
the dollar's at 69 cents, and I think on Stargate we got down to a 62-cent dollar, from what I recall. Like maybe it was
That sounds right.
around that. And that was the lowest I've ever seen it. And that was, I can't remember the year or whatever, but
Yeah.
it was, and then now we're in a 69-cent dollar, and that's, and so, and quite honestly, when I started the show I'm working on now, we had a higher exchange rate. And since it's come down, we put millions of dollars back in front of the camera because of that. And that really is the difference in some cases of, like, in those early years of Stargate, they would write big episodes,
Yeah.
and we would make them. And, we'd be spending, I want to say $150,000 an episode on some of these big, huge sets that we built in season 4 and season 3, 4, I think. And it was because of the exchange rate, because we were able to put so much more in the early 90s in front of the camera because of that. And
we as audience members don't even think of that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I can't even remember the budget. I mean, I think we started at 1,750 per episode, 1,750,000.
For everything? That's that cat from cast to catering?
Yes, per episode in season 1, I think.
Yeah.
That's a number I remember. And when we finished Universe, we were at 6 million an episode.
Wow.
And the difference in the exchange rate was huge. I mean, you go from the it was in the 90s there. It was late 90s. It was low in early 2000s.
And it's interesting because according to Brad Wright, other things were just fixed. For instance, a puddle pass, which my understanding is one person going through, not just one shot. So anytime a person went through, if there were 4 people, it was multiplied. So my understanding is one person going through was $5,000.
Yes, absolutely.
And by the end of production with SGU, one person going through was $5,000.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was crazy. Those effects things were, it was
because it was better. The quality and the craftsmanship going into each pass was improved. And so with the same amount of money, you got, this is my understanding through it, you got the improved quality of the shot.
Correct. That is correct. Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, it was, and there were so many things like that. I mean, it jumped to the end of it all.
Yeah.
When we had to liquidate everything, and we hired an auction house, and that was just gut wrenching.
I was right there.
And to have to get rid of all that stuff, and it was so much stuff that, it's like another show could easily use this, but, and to see it all go at, fractions of the price and everything. I mean, there were spacesuits that we built for the last season or one of the movies.
First Contact and the Lost Tribe. It was adapted for Universe. I have one in my living room right now. Joseph Malazzi said R&D was 100G a suit.
That's right. It was, absolutely. And they were 50 grand after that to build multiples. And I kept 2 of them because they were going to go for like a fraction of that. And I probably spent more in storage and, trying to, and then I just donated them a couple of years ago, donated them to the planetarium in Vancouver. So have no need for them, and
Well, but
nobody.
someone gets to, they're not going to get destroyed.
No, exactly,
So,
and that was I didn't want anything to go in the garbage then.
man, I remember, and I've told this story repeatedly on the channel. I remember going up there, working with you between, you were in pre-production on season 2 of Universe.
Yep.
And you were moving the universe stuff into a number of the universe sets into, I believe, stage 5, which was where SGC was.
Yes.
And you opened the door into Stargate Command. I had seen it a few years before, a couple different years, and the only thing that is left is the spiral staircase.
That's right.
And my heart sunk. And it was like, oh my God, it's gone. This was here for years. This was your guys' identity. And the universe still had a year to go. You were still going to be using that space. But I'll never forget that experience, that feeling of it is completely gone. And that's just the way of these things, They're here for a little while. They use is made of them to put them on celluloid or digital or whatever, and then they're cast away. And it's kind of a remarkable thing to think about. It's kind of similar to our lives and how, so what is it that you leave behind?
That's a good one. It's interesting. With each show that I do, and I guess learning it on Stargate was how I learned it, because that was the first, when we got told that it was coming to an end. I still remember we were on
Universe?
Yeah.
Though you were the Carl Vinson.
Yes, we were. That's where we were, exactly. And I remember getting that call, and it was like a gut punch. And there's a finality to it, and you really see that because I was in charge of liquidating everything and getting rid of it all, etc. It's a challenge. I mean, it is a challenge after that many years. There's emotional investment, there's your personal investment, and there's your work investment in it. And to see it all go away that quickly was a challenge. But then going forward, now I'm much more cold and callous about it. I'm like, just turf it out, and we'll deal. Or how long is it going to take to put on disc, and then let's just get rid of everything else, because that's what we should do. I mean, I had a similar experience recently. I was in Australia doing a show called Metropolis with Sam Esmail, and the strikes and everything got us shut down. And that was a challenge. That was 3 years of my life. And to see all the amazing work that the artist did that we were working with and put together to build, like, the look of these sets were going to be amazing and everything. And when we got shut down because of the strike, that was another challenge, because it was such good work that these people were doing, amazing work, to be honest, that won't be seen.
It's not going to be seen at all. It's one thing if it's complete through its use.
That's right.
But if it's not going to come out at all, oh man.
I mean, and we went against what the studio said, and we put stuff on disc. We took the time to put stuff on disc, and so it was backed up so that it is all recorded and able to be accessed in the future. But we were told just to get rid of it, because we were obviously burning money every day, and wanted us to shut down because of the strike. So we were told to throw everything in the dumpster and get out of there. But that was also a challenge. But it's very few shows that you put in that much of your blood, sweat, and tears, and that you care about, to do that with. So it's different. I mean, for me, a pilot that you do in 2 months is get her done, and throw it all in a stage, lock it up, and move on. Whereas when you're involved in something that are so many years of your life, whether it's Stargate or Metropolis. Metropolis was 3 years, and even Altered Carbon was only 18 months or something like that. So Metropolis was a huge part of my life and being as well, and so to have to part with that was a challenge.
Wow. Is you talked about hanging on to some of the suits from production. Is there anything that you still hung on to from Stargate that's precious to you, or are you past that point now where it's like, it's all
no, I mean,
to the wind?
I think I do have the miniature staff weapon that was built for the miniatures.
The
Uh,
puppets?
yeah. Um,
Oh, that's great. For
I
200.
I have that. That's the one thing that that's all I need. That's kind of
Yeah.
my um I have a few other things, but I'm just trying to think of what they are. It's been a few years because they're all in a box,
Scripts,
but
documents, yeah, probably.
yeah, no, I did get rid of those at one
Oh,
point and
okay.
moving and stuff, but it's more I mean, I have so many photos from that time.
Yeah.
And going back through those, I have so many memories that way. But yeah, it's the staff weapon that I have, and I know I have a couple other things. I just can't remember what they are. But
This is the one that was used on screen by the teal puppet?
yes,
Ah, good. There were
yeah,
some odd things that came out from that production office that we got through PropWorks. There was a staff weapon that was a double-ended staff weapon that never made it to the screen, and it wasn't the full size. It was like 2/3, and I was
yeah.
like, why did they make this? Were they making it for something, or was it just like someone had some time on their hands and they're like, you know what, let's just create this? And other things where it's you have to wonder what's going on. The furling, one of the furlings, had a wraith belt around him, a leaf Jaffa symbol on his head, a knife, and it's like we sold him as that, because
Yeah.
someone put him together. It's like, I don't know what the story is behind this, but we're not touching it. We're putting it out as is.
No, totally. I mean, there were things like the staff room. I think somebody thought in a meeting it would be a good idea, but when they saw it practically, they're
I
like,
see.
that kind of thing. But yeah, those kind of things, and in those early days with the furlings and that, the furlings didn't come back, did they?
No, it's season 10 for 200. That's the one that I was referring to.
Oh,
You guys
okay,
built
yes.
the giant koalas with the little ears
That's right.
that moved.
That's right. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. I was
Right.
talking with Rob, and I'm hoping that you can relate this story from your perspective, because you have to sometimes be the bad guy on set.
Yes.
He was telling me about Unending
Okay. Yeah.
and the final night where it was going early into the morning, and he said we probably went into overtime. And he was talking about I was looking at Lenic, and he was doing this, and he ran over on his last day, and the last shot of the show is of the team going up the ramp, and I think you're into 1 a.m. at this point. It's after. Tell me about that night, would you?
Oh, gee. Okay. There was that was so that was with Ben and Claudia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, it was that was a hard night. It was hard finishing that show. There was so much that happened in my life and career from those first 10 years that it brings back a lot of emotion because
Of course.
it's
Yeah.
there were highs and lows and everything in between on that. And it was a hard night. I remember, yeah, no, it was a challenge. It was because it was everybody was emotional. It was we knew it was coming to an end, and we knew there were things on the horizon that were good, and
There were movies coming, but this is the show ending.
that's right. And it was bittersweet because there with that there's some personalities there that we didn't really jive with,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, thank God. But there's others that you have spent a lot of time and energy with, and really cultivated friendships and relationships that you have to say goodbye to for a little bit.
Man, I can't imagine being there for that. I mean, Bruce Woloshyn from Rainmaker came to. There were apparently people from production who pretty much never came to set, who were here for that final pass.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine.
Coming to an end on the show that started it all, or the TV part of it started it all. It was, yeah, There was a feeling of a conclusion to it, which was nice, but also a feeling of you didn't know if you'd have the same success going forward.
That's true too. Everyone's personalities are a little different. The artistry, the creative, the core people who are making the show from top down. I mean, you guys really set the tone. But not everything is you can't assume anything going forward. I mean, Universe was canceled, right when it was getting good as an audience member.
I agree.
And you can never, I think there's part of it where it's like, and I'm curious as to what you think about this, because when you started off, you were guaranteed 4 seasons and then a fifth pretty quickly after that.
Yes.
That, I imagine, you've never seen since in terms of having the creative expectation that we do have this runway built out.
Yep.
Let's play in this rather than season after season after season. Except with Universe, you were guaranteed 2 out of the gate, but no one knew about that.
No, exactly. And I mean, it was, it's been interesting. Every sci-fi series I start, I'm like, do you guys want to buy 2 seasons off the top? You'd have more money to amort things over, so you could build these sets, amort it over 2 seasons, and, have put more on screen. But nobody wants to do that these days. So it's a challenge, because you have these amazing IPs that to world build and to build worlds from scratch that look completely different than your world. Like Stargate at least was tied to Earth. Yeah. So everything you could believe was brought from Earth in modern day, and but when you're building a civilization from scratch, you have to assume there's nothing from Earth. They have their own widgets and gadgets and knives and blah, 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 and they maybe look similar, but have they followed the same progression? You have to think about all that. So really the world building aspect is the most costly, because you have to think about everything that you come in contact with, we take for granted, whether it be a glass, a spoon, a knife, whatever, has to be redesigned or rethought of. How is it going to develop in this world that may be on the surface 500 years either ahead or behind us? Who knows?
We have to be able to recognize it, but you can't pull anything from Home Depot or Lowe's or any kind of home improvement store. And if you do, you have to fully redesign it to mask it.
That's right. And so that is really one of the biggest things. So that was about Stargate was so great, because in the first one we could tie to Earth, and going forward from that's having it tied to Earth is a big, huge help. And that's the Universe ship was not tied to Earth. So that was huge cost to build that.
James Robbins said you built with steel.
Yeah, we did. It was amazing. And it was, that set really was phenomenal, I have to say, in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell me, through the main chunk of your run for production, maybe it was all the way up till the end the same, how you would tackle a script? So when you're looking at an episode is coming, can you tell me your arc, your involvement in it from beginning to end in terms of what your influence would be in production? Where were you through the majority of the time on Stargate in terms of the production of an episode? What were your chief responsibilities, and what would you handle? You kind of alluded to it.
Everything from soup to nuts, almost.
Yeah.
In the early seasons, in the later seasons, so I take a script, I read it, and then my immediate reaction is to want to break it down into a one-liner to see how it schedules out. So at least I then do that process, which gets my head more into the script, into the details of it, and knows sort of logistically how it's going to be tackled. And then you look at it on a one-liner, you can see where your holes are, and schedule-wise, at least. And, okay, there's only 2 pages in this one location that is not near anything else that we need. So is there any way that we can either change that or adapt it or those sorts of things? So then at that point, I take it to the executive producers and I say, okay, yeah, this looks good. Or is there any way we can, maneuver certain things around to make them fit a little bit nicer? And they would say yes. And you get into that dialogue about, can we, instead of being in a gravel pit, can it be in a X? I can't think of it right now, but
because your region in terms of what's available, I would imagine.
Exactly. And
if you're going to have to go out on a location,
Yeah.
Are you relatively accurate in terms of estimating the amount of time it takes to get through a page, the budget based on what it is that they're looking for. I would imagine that all comes into it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. If usually once you work with people on a show, you get a sense of their cadence, and you can kind of understand, okay, we can probably, depending on the director or this person, that person, you understand what they're able to accomplish in a day. Like Peter DeLuise, you could easily do a 7-page day and not
You said 9.
Well, yes, I'm being generous. He sometimes did 9, 10 pages, and we'd all be like, "Oh my God, is he going to make it through it?" But he did. He was amazing at that. And sometimes you get directors that you're like, "No, that'd be lucky if we get through 2 pages." So that's the variable that you can't control. But if you are working with a director the same, day in, day out, or the same group like Andy Makita and all that kind of thing, I knew how they would look at it. So you kind of, this will fit with this, or this won't fit with that.
Would you try, Vancouver rains a lot.
Yeah.
Would you try to push locations earlier in production for an episode? Because am I right? It was a 7-day shoot or 8-day shoot for episodes typically.
Yeah, it was 7 days. It was 7.5 days. It was 8 days. It was 6 days. So depends on the season.
Okay. Would you try to shoot location footage earlier in the episode so that if God did decide to dump it on you, you guys could move that around later on? What was the kind of expectation?
Yeah, we would look at locations and go, okay, do we want to? When do we think this can happen? But honestly, when you're shooting shows in that few a days, it's kind of a bit of a crapshoot in Vancouver. So you kind of, whether you do the locations, there were times where we would do locations early on because we knew that the weather would turn on us down the road if we left it too long. Mm-hmm. But there were locations that we would, it didn't matter because we knew that the weather would be similar. And we were shooting in February. We always went to camera in February. Yeah. So if you're shooting in February, March, it doesn't matter. You're going to get, but if there's a snowstorm coming on the horizon, or there's even talk of that, you're going to try and do stuff up front so you don't hit that.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there were the occasional episodes that just were square peg and round hole in terms of your production. I'm thinking Heroes. This was a show where a lot of it was shot over the course of months. When you could get some here, you could get some there. Most of it's on the base. And it allowed Rob the time to turn what I believe was a 55 episode, good 55 episode script into 2 hours from that. I would imagine were there just episodes in that kind of situation, that rare situation where you just got here and there, and okay, Rick's here on this date. Let's get this shot.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. In later seasons, we did tandem episodes or tandem days, and I remember there was a day in the week where when we were shooting Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis, and every day we had main unit running, and every day we had second unit running, doing a different episode of a different show each day. And it was who's on first, what's on second. Laurel and Hardy did, and it was crazy. That time that we did SG-1 and Atlantis overlapping each other.
Pegasus Project?
Yeah, well, just the whole, because we would shoot the seasons at the same time.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Parallel, out of the same office, basically the same prepping crew and different shooting crews, but it was because you couldn't have a meeting in the room while they were having a meeting in the room, or you couldn't have, while they were in the boardroom having a concept meeting or production meeting, we'd have to be, it was a big pain in the butt. And it was a challenge because you'd constantly have to think about what the other show was doing and where they were and this and that. And would they be willing to shift to accommodate this or that or the next, that was really hard work.
But my understanding is that Atlantis could not have looked as good as it did without sharing the SG-1 assets, especially behind the camera.
100%.
My gosh.
Yeah, that 100%. It did capitalize on the fact that we had such a strong base for SG-1 and such a strong groundwork, and we had such a our own warehouse of assets and set deck and everything, and all that could be repurposed, you know, over that many seasons. Because I think, you know, it was season 8. We had 8 seasons of Stargate SG-1 before Atlantis, and right. And so that was 8 years of stuff, you know, like that you could reuse and you could purpose at times.
Man, it's a wild thing to think about, the amount of content that was generated from the number of people who came through. What were your longest days? And did you ever think, I don't know if I can do this next year? This has been great, but I don't know, man. This is really pushing it.
I never thought that.
Okay.
The last part.
Okay. I was made for this.
I thought that on subsequent shows.
Yeah.
Not that one. Never thought of that on that one. It was just such a great experience, and I felt the respect and the love, and I felt great, and it was a great, that whole thing. So it was wonderful. What was the first part of that question?
What were some of your longest days?
Yeah. Longest day was on episode 100 with Martin Wood, and he went over 9 hours. There's a law in BC where you can't shoot over 9 hours without a rest, or else you have to pay the crew meal penalty and all this stuff. And it was insane. And he shot, and I had to pull the plug on him in the middle of a take. And when the zombies were coming up the ramp or down the ramp or whatever, and I just it was.
So this is 200.
Episode 2. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. So the scene with Mitchell in the gate room.
Yes, and that was like, no, you got to go home, cut, and that's it. And that was the first time I remember having to do the proverbial plug pull very vocally and send everybody home.
Wow. So you avoided the consequences of that.
No, we had to pay. No, we had.
Oh, you did. So it's not like, okay, well, we're in it. Let's just keep on going. There's no option for that.
That day had a $50,000 overage just for that day alone.
Wow. That episode, though, everyone.
It was one of the best episodes. It was awesome.
And you were in it in the wedding.
Yes.
When you get to 200 shows, what I have understood from what people have said was that every department was firing on every single cylinder to make every one of these segments extraordinary. And everyone was so thrilled to be doing it because they recognized that we're firmly in bonus territory now in terms of the what a typical show gets to do. We're just going to have a great time at this. Is that
yes, absolutely. What you were? No, it is. But also there's a sense of pride when you get to that many episodes. There's a sense of pride, a sense of hope, a sense of, accomplishment. And it's something that everybody has in every department, just about the fact that they're on something that is going to become a part of history.
Yeah.
I mean, how many shows get to that point? And it is something that, and being proud of the fact that it had such a fan base. And because, at that time, it was, I think, huge. And we'd have people outside the gate, standing and waiting to get a glimpse of things. And that's, I mean, it's just amazing to have that kind of feeling and that kind of sense of we're doing something that means something.
When you have a character like Carson Beckett, Paul McGillion, Sunday continues to be my favorite episode of Atlantis, Martin Garrow's episode, gets knocked off. And you have fans hire a bagpipe band to come to the gates to share this this overwhelming amount of love and support for a character from a fictional TV show.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind blowing.
No, absolutely. I mean, it kind of goes, whoa, okay. And you really think that you must, it's hard. I think now, I look back on it, I probably didn't think this then, but it's amazing how much that show affected so many people and how it brought so many people together and how it continues even through conventions now. I understand, it brings people together, and that's it. There's very few shows that do that. And even now, think of shows that go for 13 seasons or 10 seasons and have 2 spin-offs. It's few and far between.
No one gets that now.
No.
You may get a 10 to 15 season episode run, look at like a show like Severance, or that's like smaller
Absolutely,
level sci-fi in terms of production budget. But then, no, I mean, it just doesn't happen. Even Lord of the Rings with its however many billions of dollars amortized over 5 seasons.
That's right.
It's like, wow, that is extraordinary. These things don't happen anymore.
No, they don't. And so being proud of that, I was really proud of that. And I don't think I was that proud back then, but now being in this industry longer, you realize that really was a special thing.
Stargate Universe comes along. Atlantis has ended. Sci-Fi has canceled it.
Yep.
I think that had the race story been wound down, I think that had there been some kind of a conclusion to that, fans would have probably responded to the end of Atlantis differently. We're also drunk on the fact that SG-1 got 10 seasons. We'd like another one of those, please.
Yes.
Do you remember what it was like seeing that response from the community in prepping for Stargate Universe? What were your feelings about that then? Were you just keeping your head down, doing the work?
I was keeping my head down.
Yeah.
I wasn't personally as big of a fan of Atlantis.
Yeah.
I found, for me, it was too sci-fi, if that makes sense. Okay. It was too much, whereas at least SG-1 was tied to Earth, and I could, I liked that. I enjoyed that, and I could, it had some Earth-based episodes, which I loved. And I love those the most because it tied the sci-fi elements into Earth. I enjoyed that. So when I was always looking, and I was reading the scripts for the universe, and I love the characters in it. And I love the character drama that it was. And it was really was more like Battlestar Galactica with the characters in that, which I did love Battlestar Galactica as well.
And Firefly.
Yes, absolutely. And so I really loved the characters that were being put together for Universe. So I was really head down, really focusing on that. Yes, Atlantis came to an end. I wasn't one of the ones that was sad about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna level with you, John. I have probably more communication with the Atlantis cast than anybody. But in terms of what the work is, it's my least favorite of the 3, largely because it did not have a Daniel. It did not have someone to say, hey, whoa, should we really kill those humanoid replicators? Is this really the right thing to do? I think it lacked that voice in that regard. And that's all that I'm going to say about that. I still love the show. But when Universe comes along, it's clear to me, and maybe you can shine a little bit more of some perspective on this, that everyone's dialing it up to 11 in terms of production.
Yes.
We know what we're doing with this now. You have Bridget McGuire said you could have built stuff for NASA with that production team, with the tools that you guys had accumulated behind the scenes to create this stuff. Your in-house digital effects team, Mark Savella. When Air comes out, I'm watching this and I'm like, this is a completely different show. Yeah. This feels like it's happening.
Yeah.
This feels like it doesn't feel like a sci-fi action Indiana Jones romp in space. I believe that this could be occurring. Did you get that feeling as well? How much do you think the learning and the exploration of tools and building things and resources brought everyone up to, okay, we really have this down now? And not that it wasn't before, but by the time that Universe came along, everyone knew exactly what it was they were doing and just dialed it up even further.
Absolutely, and that everybody tried to strive for bigger and better, and trying to really put this new show in a place where it was going to be successful. Whether that be with all the piping in the ship, that Mark Davidson and all those guys put together, and that was amazing. But everybody did dial it up because this is, they're proving themselves, reproving themselves, if you will. Because Stargate's over, and now this is a new show. We have to prove ourselves.
Yeah,
and we can't let it fail in any way, shape, or form. And we have to be on for all of it.
Walking onto that set was like walking into Jules Verne.
Absolutely.
I got lost.
I don't blame you. Yeah, no, it's
and it was like it was like the Nautilus. It was like one of his books had come to life. The grates that you would have for the dry ice and the natural lighting. James Robbins just went to town.
Absolutely. No, he did a spectacular job on that. I mean, that set is something that I'll always be proud of, because it was just something that you don't get to do very often. I mean, even on a show like Metropolis, building sets is so costly these days. What we did there was having that ability to build that kind of scope and know you could possibly amortize it over 2 years was huge, because you would have no way of doing that with a single season budget these days. That you'd probably have enough to build the gate room and maybe some of that, and you'd have to add on to it in the following season and then keep going and that sort of thing. But to be able to do that off the top was amazing.
When you moved into season 2, the bridge was built on stage 5.
Yep.
And I think the shuttle was brought over. I think it was upstairs, right, so that you could do the thing with the door.
Yep.
Having just a door that would go into the ground and saying like, okay, we're at the top of the ship now. Little things like that were just extraordinary to behold. Whereas an audience member, again, we're not thinking about that kind of thing, but hearing behind the scenes, the stories behind that, you're right. Doors always go sideways or up. What was that last season like? Was it just more of bringing the A game and doing the next thing? Were there any memories that stood out?
There were. The cast was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so much fun. Robert Carlyle was amazing. Just seeing him emote and act like the way he does was just phenomenal to be around that presence. And then just all the other actors, because of that, brought their A game every single day. And Louis Ferreira, who's still one of my closest friends, he was, him and Bobby would set the tone and really, if any of the actors stepped out of line, they'd haul them back in. That was so great, and it was amazing to have that kind of from the top down, and everybody cared so much on that show about everything, every element of it. So that was inspiring to see that kind of group work together and just really do that. I mean, every one of them, Jamil, David, Elise, phenomenal.
Did you work with Joel at all? Joel Goldsmith?
Yes, I went down with Brad to the orchestrations and all the recordings in just north of Seattle when we did the 2 movies, and that was amazing. Just amazing experience with him, and just the way he would orchestrate and write. I learned so much about sound and music and what goes into a score at that time, and he would just it was just phenomenal to watch the way he would write the notes down on the piece of paper, and then they'd play that, and then he wouldn't like it, so he'd do a little change of that, and he'd give it out. It was phenomenal. It was amazing to watch.
I can't watch the last 15 minutes of Universe without I have a physical reaction to the end of that show because of that piece of music that he wrote.
Yes.
I think that it is the finest piece of music that he did. When you were doing Gauntlet, I know you found out later that the show
we always have. Yeah.
Was there a this could be it? You know, was there a finality to that? Andy Makita said something similar when they were editing.
Yeah.
He was like, it may not be, but I think this may be. Was there any of that feeling? And what do you think about that particular piece of music? I'm curious.
I mean, we had a sense that potentially could be it. I think we kept moving time slots, or that there was a whole shuffle there, and that's when wrestling went on Friday nights, and we moved back to Tuesdays or something like that. I can't remember. And we all, based on that, and based on seeing, the way we were moved around, we all thought that this could be it. And so there was a sense of dread, if you will.
Yeah.
Obviously not knowing for sure, and there was always this could be it. And so, yeah, I remember that even shooting that, I mean, with Brian and Elise and everything, and everybody had a sense that this could be it, and we're hoping it's not, but let's see. And so, yeah, that was a challenge, and the music is phenomenal. I mean, it really is. Joel he was phenomenal. I can't say anything else. And that piece of music was awesome.
I was lucky to meet him a couple of times. We talked a little bit, and it's one of those regrets of mine because we had exchanged words. Nothing was. He had called me to make some edits on an interview that I had done where I was sloppy, and he was just saying, hey, just do this, and I was like, oh shit, okay, right. And by the time Universe came along, I didn't ask him to come on for an interview because I was butthurt that I as a 22-year-old reporter couldn't get my shit together and get names right in an article. And then he died, and I never got the opportunity to tell him that his music from Universe was the best that he had ever done.
Yeah.
And I carry that with me to this day. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, please God, someone release it. Reach out to his wife. Rick Chaddock is gone, so I'm doing if there's just anything that I could do within my power to get that music out, I will do it. And he was there was no one like him. Maybe his dad. Maybe.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. It really is. It was amazing to see him work, and it was amazing his process, and it was just, I can still hear his voice on a phone.
Do you have any memories of Don?
Don Davis, absolutely. He was just a pleasure. I mean, he was awesome. Every time John, he'd come in and he'd sit down. He'd
talk about a voice.
Yeah, he'd shoot the shit with you. He was a real salt of the earth person who cared, and he was amazing. And when he died, it was tragic. And I remember, there's very few people you remember the place and where you were and all that kind of thing, and he's one of them, because he was such an amazing human.
And that Ozark bass voice. You know, that
Yep.
there's whoever had the idea to name the ship after him. He would have been so thrilled. I mean,
Absolutely.
that was a great nod. And he's one of those people that those of us who had the privilege of knowing him and being able to watch his work and see his artistry and carving and painting and everything else, we were all made fuller by his presence.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's folks like Don, folks like Joel, Carmen Argenziano, Cliff Simon, Willie Garson, Louis Gossett Jr. My God, how do you get this guy?
That was amazing. I mean, I remember because I grew up with him, and I remember when he was hired on the show, I was like, that's amazing. And then I remember going, wait, how old is he? And at that time, I think he was 72. And and our insurance, you had to get them. There was a special thing we had to do with anybody over 70. So I went through the process. We had to get a doctor to fill out his stuff and everything. And I remember him coming up, and I'm just like, please don't die on our show.
Stay well, you know.
Exactly. And thank God, it was all great. As soon as I saw him, saw it, looked in great condition and all that, and so that was great. It was amazing.
Do you remember the other story about that?
No.
So Christopher Judge told me this.
Yes.
He's you're filming him for the first. It's in the morning, and he's in his. I think this is his second or third episode back. So he's in his robes, and they're doing the council meeting, and he has the big speech, you know. And Christopher said, Louis said, I forget exactly what it was, but Louis said, oh, "Okay, I'm done. I'm going to be in my trailer," and I forget who was directing, but someone was like. Does he think we're done? And Christopher was like, well, Lou is done for the day.
Oh yeah.
And you had to change. It was like, well, then we're going to have to move some pieces around. This is Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we're thrilled to have this guy. Yep. If this is his expectation in terms of the amount of time that he's on set, we're going to move heaven and earth to make it work if it's reasonable.
Absolutely.
It's little things like that you as a producer is like, okay, what can we jigsaw in here to make this work?
Exactly.
Because there's always something.
Absolutely. There is always something. And you're always trying to think of how to solve the problem.
Wow. Before I let you go, the last thing I really want to ask is you mentioned Louis. I've talked a little bit about what beforehand about what Brian Smith and Morris have said. Who do you take with you in terms of from this production who are still firmly a part of your life, and even if it's just a text here and there, and who do you feel the most thankful to in terms of the production for really giving you you're never going to be out of work, John. I mean, the what it is that you are expected to do for productions is not an easy thing to do. Not everyone can do it. The amount of pressure and everything else. Who do you owe your thanks for that for the most for giving you the opportunity to show that you could do this, you know, over the years.
I mean, Ron French for bringing me into the show, firstly. Michael Greenberg and Richard Dean Anderson for giving me a shot, and because I fucked up a couple times the first season, and they still made it. They were like, just learn from this and move on.
Yeah.
Like, we'll all
Are you going to learn from it?
Oh yeah, totally, 100%. Have to this day. And then Jonathan Glasner and Brad Wright for really supporting me in those first couple of years, and then Brad Wright and Robert Cooper after that for every other season and beyond, and for Universe, and give me the opportunity to produce. I mean, I was a producer before I was age 30, and I owe them almost everything. I'm thankful for John Smith and Candace Armstrong in the first season for really taking me under their wing and showing me. I mean, they could have easily shipped me out the door for as well, and it was that was fantastic. It was a great feeling. And to this day, I still keep in contact with most of them. And when Brad Wright and I had dinner in Toronto a few weeks ago, and I talk to Amanda every couple months, and we see each other. Our kids really look up to Amanda and her daughter, Olivia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob Cooper, still regular, Andy and Candace as well. And, that was such a special time in all of our lives that, we all kind of grew in certain ways together.
It's not really fair that I pin you into a situation now thinking about it. Well, name everybody, John.
I mean,
you can't do it. That's not fair. No, so I apologize for that.
No. But to this day, I'm still in touch with everybody.
Yeah.
A lot of the cast from Universe. I mean, Brian and Louis specifically.
Brian is extraordinary.
Yes.
That the talent behind that guy is just. I've been trying to get a screener copy of his film. But it's just these people will never be out of work. They are so good at what they do in their craft that it's just they have so much to give and share, and we as audience members are really have something exciting. Yeah. Always coming out for if you watch one of these people. So
absolutely they do.
This has been a thrill for me, John. I really appreciate you coming on and sitting down and talking with me. It means the world to me to finally be able to sit down and talk with you and get your perspective on these things. And I hope you had a good time.
I did, absolutely. This has been great. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking me down memory lane. So much of that I had forgotten about.
John G. Lenic, Stargate producer. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did recording it. And tremendous thanks to Robert C. Cooper for finally convincing John to come on. I've been trying to get him on for a few years now, and he finally agreed. So I really appreciate it, man. The stories that he shared, his unique perspective and thoughtfulness, and his willingness to just explore some of the more esoteric things. But on Dial the Gate, when you get to episode 312, I mean, come on. We've dialed in a lot of stuff, and we can go meandering really through the weeds sometimes on this program, and he gave that in spades. So again, thank you, John, so much for coming on and sharing so many behind-the-scenes stories with us. We've got a big season heading your way this year with a lot of folks in front of and behind the camera, and a lot of creativity from fans as well. And I really hope that you're enjoying the content that we're putting out week after week. We have no control over when Stargate comes back, and MGM and Amazon, they're going to do something at some point. It could be tomorrow. It could be years from now. It could go either way. Our job is not to ask when they're going to be doing this, what their decisions are. I can certainly ask those questions on behalf of all of you. But when it comes right down to it, we really have to keep the spirit of the show burning. We have to keep the candle burning. We share the stories from production before, and if they choose to do another one, that's going to be awesome. But until then, there are plenty of stories from production to share from the beginning of SG-1 all through the end of Universe. So we're going to keep on trucking. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, click the like button. It does make a difference with YouTube and will continue to help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And leaving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this episode will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. I've been off for a couple of weeks. What you're watching right now, the day that this aired, is the end of the second week that I've been away taking care of some personal things and hanging out with some people that I care about. I don't usually talk about my personal life on the show very much. Pretty much never. There isn't a ton to say. I don't have a spouse. I don't have kids. But if I did have a kid, or at least a little brother, it would be this one. This is Ethan. I've known him since he was 4 years old, and I've watched him grow up into an amazing young man. He's 19 years old now, and he is a regular chip off the old block like his dad. He's a snare drummer. His dad's also a drummer. And every time I turn around, he's in a new group working on a new set. And I would like to share something with you that I got to see firsthand over the last several days with his team putting together for a percussion final, world-class percussion final where they placed recently. And I'll fill you in on a little bit of that after the fact. The program that you're about to watch took 6 months for them to develop. It's called From the Bottom, and that's its name, From the Bottom. And it is, his dad calls it percussion theater. If you were in color guard, you know what this is. If you were part of that program, if you have kids now, you're probably aware of this, otherwise maybe not. And I can guarantee you it will be the coolest thing you will see all day, even cooler than John Lenic. I got to see these guys perform up close, rehearsing this time and again, and then going into finals and placing repeatedly, besting their score from their previous day's event. And it's the same performance again and again. And what I ended up getting with my iPhone was 3 angles of rehearsals. So I decided to put them together into this edit that I've made and show off Ethan. And I hope you enjoy watching this as much as I enjoyed seeing this thing performed in person. This never got old. So take a look at From the Bottom.
Ooh.
That's Tyrus yelling at the end there. He always does that. What you saw took 6 months to create with 45 performers. And every time they performed this weekend at their national championship, they gained over their previous points and ended up placing ultimately 7th at the top end. It's quite an impressive feat. Not a lot of people can do what you just saw. Ethan's been only drumming for the past couple of years, if you can believe it or not. I wanted to record the live event, but they say no cameras, and I mean, it's like a moth to flame for a video producer. Tell me no cameras. Oh, that's interesting. Click. So that's why I just wanted to share the rehearsals. But it's pretty remarkable what they've managed to put together for such a show. And on top of that, Ethan, his dad, experienced a pretty major tragedy about a week before what you just saw. And Ethan went out and did that anyway. He performed, and he was brilliant. It meant a lot to me to be able to be there, to see them all execute this, and see him fulfill something that he's been working on for a really long time. So the kid's tough as nails, and he's just a brilliant performer, and I'm really glad that I have him in my life. Thanks so much to my moderating team. I can't get this done without you guys. Maybe the pre-recorded shows like this one, but Anthony, Jeremy, Marsha, Summer, Tracy, Raj, Lockwatcher, Kevin, you guys make this show possible week in and week out. My producer, Linda Gate-Gabra-Fury, Kevin Weaver, thank you guys. Thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web, keeping dialthegate.com up and running. At some point here in the near future, we're going to have a new version of the website. We're going to see how that's going to go. We have an enormous slate of content. Currently 17 are scheduled for the next month on the website that I'm really excited to get to. Most of them are live shows. He's just going to be chugging through them one after the other. So keep it right here on Dial the Gate as we move through this content and share some brand new, old Stargate stories from content that we all cherish and love. I think that's all that I've got. Everything looks good on my end. So we're going to wrap this up and go over to Peter Badnaris, who was the art director for 2 seasons of SG-1 and 2 seasons of Atlantis. But we're only going to cover the SG-1 episodes because we ran long, so we're going to save the Atlantis stuff later. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side.